The knock came at 10:17 on a Thursday night, 3 short taps against my apartment door. I almost ignored it. I had been sitting at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee, staring at a stack of bills and pretending I wasn't thinking about the divorce papers waiting in my desk drawer. Then she knocked again. When I opened the door, I barely recognized the woman standing in the hallway. She was probably in her early 30s, wearing a dark coat over a pale blue dress, her hair damp from the rain. She looked exhausted, but what caught me was the way she kept glancing over her shoulder. "Don't ask why I'm here," she whispered. I should have closed the door. Instead, I stepped aside. "Come in." She hesitated before entering, then stood in my living room like someone afraid to touch anything. I handed her a towel and asked if she wanted coffee. She shook her head. "I just need somewhere quiet for a few minutes." "Are you in trouble?" Her eyes met mine. "Not exactly." That answer bothered me more than a yes would have. I had met strangers at bad moments before, but never one who looked like she was carrying a secret heavy enough to bend her shoulders. She finally sat on the edge of my couch. "My name is Claire." I told her mine, and she gave a small nod. "I know." I froze. "How?" She immediately looked down. "I've heard about you." Before I could ask from whom, headlights swept across my living room window. Claire stood so quickly that the towel fell from her hands. She stared through the blinds, her face draining of color. "Are they here?" I asked. She didn't answer. A dark SUV had stopped across the street. No one got out. It simply waited with its headlights off. Claire backed away from the window. "Please don't call anyone." "Claire, if somebody is following you, I need to know." She swallowed. "The person in that car isn't following me." "Then who are they?" She looked at me for several seconds, as if deciding whether I deserved the truth. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded photograph. She handed it to me without saying a word. It showed my father standing beside a younger woman outside a courthouse. I knew the courthouse. I knew my father. But I had never seen the woman. "What does this have to do with me?" I asked. Claire whispered, "Everything." Then she turned her hand over, and that was when I saw the ring on her finger. I stared at the ring, a band with a stone. "Are you married?" I asked. Claire nodded. I was. She said it and made me tighten. "To whom?" She looked at the photograph in my hand. "Your father." Fingers went numb. My father had been dead for 6 years. Claire watched my face and said, "He left something for you." For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. My father had been married to my mother for 38 years, and after she died, everyone in our family had treated his life as an open book. There was no second wife. No secret marriage. No Claire. "You're lying," I finally said. She didn't argue. Instead, she reached into her coat and pulled out a small envelope. My name was written across the front in my father's handwriting. I knew it immediately. He had written that same way on birthday cards, Christmas envelopes, and every note he'd ever left on the kitchen counter. My hand started shaking before I even opened it. Inside was a single sentence: "If Claire comes to you, believe her before you believe your brother." I read it twice. Then a third time. My brother, Daniel, was the last person I expected to be connected to this. Daniel had always been the golden child. Dad had helped him buy his house, paid off his business loan, and somehow convinced everyone that Daniel simply needed more help than I did. I had accepted it for years because fighting about money had never seemed worth losing my family. But now I looked at Claire and wondered what else I had been willing not to see. What did my father know about Daniel? I asked. Claire lowered her eyes. He found out that Daniel had been taking money from him. I felt a strange calm settle over me. "How much?" "I don't know the exact amount." "Then why come to me?" She reached into her bag and placed a small black flash drive on my table. Because your father kept copies of everything. I stared at it. Where? In a safety deposit box. My heart started pounding. Why didn't he leave it to you? Claire gave a bitter smile. Because I wasn't supposed to inherit anything. She touched the ring on her finger. This marriage was never about money. Your father married me because he was afraid. Afraid of Daniel. She nodded. Your father discovered that someone had been changing documents behind his back. Bank records. Property papers. His will. I picked up the flash drive but didn't plug it into anything. Why didn't you go to the police? Because the person who helped Daniel was inside the law office. She paused. And because your father told me that if anything happened to him, I should find you. The headlights outside disappeared. Claire moved toward the window again. They're gone. I looked at the clock. 10:41, then my phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. Neither of us moved. The call ended. A second later, a message appeared, we need to talk about Dad's house. Tonight. Claire read it over my shoulder. Her face changed. He knows I'm here. I looked down at the flash drive in my hand. For the first time in 6 years, I wondered whether my father's death had really been the ending of our family's secret or the beginning. I didn't call Daniel back. Instead, I took the flash drive to the old desk in my bedroom, the one my father had given me when I moved out at 22. Claire followed but stopped in the doorway. Before you open it, she said, you need to understand something. I turned toward her. What? Your father didn't trust the police. He didn't trust his lawyer. And by the end, he wasn't sure he could trust your mother either. That hurt more than I expected. My mother had been gone for 4 years, but I still couldn't imagine her involved in anything dishonest. Claire noticed my expression and immediately shook her head. I'm not saying she betrayed him. I'm saying he was afraid someone was using her name. I inserted the drive into my laptop. There were 3 folders. The first was labeled property. The second was bank. The third simply said read last. I opened property first. Inside were scanned deeds, payment records, and a document showing that my father's lake house had been transferred into Daniel's name 8 months before Dad died. I stared at the date. That's impossible. Claire came closer. Why? Because Dad was in the hospital that week. I opened another file. There was a signature on the transfer document. It looked like my father's, but something about it bothered me. I enlarged it. The signature was almost perfect, except for one detail. My father always finished his name with a long underline. This one didn't. It's forged, I whispered. The bank folder was worse. There were withdrawals totaling nearly $80,000, all made from an account I had never known existed. Most of the money went to a company called Westbridge Consulting. Claire pointed at the screen. That's the company Daniel used to move the money. I looked at her. How do you know? She hesitated. Because I worked there. I felt the room tilt. You worked for Daniel. Before I met your father. She sat down. I didn't know what Daniel was doing at first. I thought I was processing ordinary paperwork. Then I noticed payments that didn't make sense. When I asked questions, he fired me. And Dad found you afterward. Yes. She pulled the ring from her finger and held it between her palms. Your father told me he had been trying to protect you and Daniel from each other. He believed Daniel was angry because your father planned to change the will. I opened the final folder. There was only one video file. The timestamp was from 3 days before Dad died. I clicked it. My father's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired, thinner than I remembered, but his voice was steady. If you're watching this, I didn't get the chance to explain everything. He paused, then looked directly into the camera. My son, I need you to know that I never chose Daniel over you. My chest tightened. I made him believe I had because I needed him to reveal what he was doing. Claire covered her mouth. My father continued, the real evidence isn't on this drive. It's somewhere Daniel will never think to look. Then the video stopped. I sat frozen. A notification appeared on my phone. It was from Daniel. Dad's house. Tomorrow morning. Come alone. I looked at Claire. She whispered, don't go. I asked, why? Her eyes filled with tears. Because I think your father knew exactly what Daniel would do next. I didn't go to Dad's house alone. I went with Claire, but we stayed in the car across the street until Daniel arrived. He stepped out carrying a folder and looked around like he expected someone to be watching. When he entered the house, I waited another minute before walking inside through the back door. Claire followed me. We found Daniel in Dad's study, standing beside the old bookshelf. You should have come alone, he said without turning around. I looked at the folder in his hand. You should have told me about Claire. He finally faced us. His expression changed when he saw her. She's lying to you. Claire didn't respond. I placed the flash drive on the desk. Then explained the property transfer. Daniel went pale. You don't understand. Then make me understand. He opened the folder and pulled out the original deed. Dad changed the will before he died. He left the lake house to me. This isn't about the lake house, I said. It's about everything else. Daniel stared at the floor. For the first time in my life, my brother looked scared. Then I remembered Dad's words, the real evidence isn't on this drive. I walked toward the bookshelf. My father had spent hours there, pretending to read whenever family arguments became too loud. I ran my fingers along the shelves until I noticed one book sitting slightly forward. I pulled it out. A small metal key dropped onto the floor. Claire picked it up. Daniel whispered, "Don't." That one word told me everything. The key opened a locked drawer inside Dad's desk. Beneath old photographs was a small recorder and a stack of printed emails. The first email was from Daniel to Dad's attorney. It explained exactly how he planned to move the property and hide the withdrawals. The second email was worse. It showed Daniel had asked the attorney to prepare a fake transfer document using Dad's signature. But the recorder contained something neither of us expected. Dad had recorded a conversation between Daniel and the attorney 3 weeks before his death. Daniel admitted taking the money. He admitted forging the deed. And then he said something that made the room completely silent. He'll never fight me. He spent his whole life believing Dad loved me more. I looked at Daniel. He started crying. I was wrong, he said. Dad told me everything would be exposed after he died. I panicked. I wanted to hate him. Maybe part of me did. But underneath the anger was something quieter, the realization that my father had known exactly how deeply his favoritism had hurt me. He had spent years trying to correct a wound he had helped create, and he had waited too long to say it. Claire placed the recorder on the desk. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I looked at Daniel, then at the photograph of my father. "The truth," I said. We turned the evidence over to an attorney outside Daniel's circle. The forged documents were challenged, the stolen money was recovered, and the lake house was eventually returned to the family trust. Daniel faced the consequences of what he'd done, but I never celebrated it. Months later, Claire came to my apartment again. She was no longer wearing my father's ring. She placed it on the table between us. "He wanted you to have this," she said. I picked it up and held it for a long moment. My father had spent his final years trying to tell me something he should have said while he was alive. I finally understood it wasn't about the money or the house. It was about knowing, at last, that I had never been the son he loved less. I slipped the ring into my father's old desk drawer and closed it gently. Some things don't need to be worn to be remembered.